DJ Scream, heavy in the streets.
We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood. We gon' get it, we gon' get it, we gon' get it. We gon' get it, we gon' get it. Get it in blood. Get it in blood.
Hood rich.
Get it out the mud.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Saints and Appetizers podcast. And this evening, I have some appetizers for you, and some pretty good ones. Definitely a lot at the top of this card, and I'm talking some MMA here for you. The top of this card, some very exciting and definitely important fights, and at least one title fight on this card. UFC 313. Pereira versus Ankalaev, and this card is pretty good, but I feel as if it's got a lot to live up to just in regards to how good it is, finishes and stoppages, knockouts and submissions, just because of the fact that a UFC fight night from like 2 weeks ago, what was it, the Cejudo versus Song fight night, like every single fight on that card, besides 3 fights on the main card, all were finishes, were either knockouts or submissions. So just with the pay-per-view or numbered cards in 2025, none of them have been overly exciting, competitive fights, but nothing too crazy with the finishes and from the finishes from bottom to top. I would love to see that out of one of these pay-per-views this year. But this is this is UFC 13, Pereira versus Ankalaev, and this is March 8th, 2025 at the standard time, 10 Eastern, 9 Central time at the T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada, United States. And I'll just go over just kind of the preliminary card. There aren't a lot of huge names on the prelims. No one that familiar and notable names on the early prelims, but there's a couple on the preliminary card. The first one being a middleweight bout between Bruno Ferreira versus Arman Petrian, and then the main event. This is get bonus points from me on any UFC card that's got some heavyweights on it. So on the main event of the preliminary card, you got a good one, very notable title contender in heavyweight, Curtis Blades versus Razivan Kunev. Just to top off the prelims and going into the main card, you got a good one, and hopefully you get a devastating knockout going one way or the other, just to kick off the main card without actually kicking it off with the actual fighters on. It would be, I guess, King Green versus Mauricio Rufy. But anyways, let's get into this card. Let's get into the main card and get some predictions going here. So can I get a menu? And so the first fight on this card is a lightweight bout between King Green versus Mauricio Rufy. And King Green, he's getting a little bit up there in age. That's kind of my main concern of him lately, just in seeing him fight pretty regularly, honestly. Let's see when it was the last fight. His last fight, I guess, was July 27th, 2024. So wasn't that long ago, but hasn't had a great run, kind of up and down, for a fighter that fights with his hands down, and is looking to have one of those big explosions and catch you with some of those like point strikes that just attempt to knock you out. I just don't know how well that'll work out against at least early in his career. So far, Mauricio Rufy's shown that he's a knockout artist, and that's about the only way he wins. But just being a veteran and being a little bit more savvy, that's about kind of only a thing I see positive here from King Green versus Mauricio Rufy because but both of them are going to look to strike. And King Green, he may uh, have the edge, a slight edge in the grappling game, just because I mean that's how he started out was as a wrestler, and he's had submissions in in his career, unlike Mauricio Rufus, where almost all of his fights have just been by knockout. But let's see here. So Bobby King Green, I just want to call him Bobby Green, not stupid King Green, but King Green. We call him his official name, legal name, King Green. In his last 5 fights, he is 3-2. So it sounds like I say he's kind of hit like a rough patch or something, but not really. So at the top of that, like the last 3 fights, he got knocked out by Jalen Turner, who also fights later on this card, and then he beat Jim Miller by decision, and then got put to sleep by a triangle choke against Patty Pemblin. So not great just in those last three, but he's definitely the veteran in this fight. If anything, he's got some veteran savvy that maybe Mauricio Rufy doesn't have because he's had 55 fights in his career with 32 wins and 16 losses, 1 draw, and 1 no contest. In the 32 wins, he's had 11 wins by knockout, 9 wins by submission, and 12 wins by decision. So it shows like he's a true mixed martial artist. He's going to want to come in there with that style with the hands down and look for the knockout, but he has the ability to wrestle if he feels he's not 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 doesn't have the edge in the striking game. He has the ability to wrestle and look for a submission or just go the distance with you. But just veteran savvy. That's definitely the key attribute that King Green is bringing into this fight. Is just that he's a veteran and he's seen it all. And then in his 16 losses, he's lost 5 by knockout, 3 by submission, and 8 by decision. So just as much as I'm saying he's won fights or can win fights any type of way, he can also lose them as well. He can be knocked out, he can be submitted, he can lose a fight going the distance. All right, so now on to Mauricio Ruffy, who is just a knockout, young, up and coming knockout artist, just 28 years old, and in his last, let's see, last five, he's 5-0 in his last 5 fights, and he's got a 3 fight win streak going in the UFC. Six, and he has a 6 fight total win streak going. And in those, let's see, just the last 5. Yeah, so in those last 5 fights, all 4 of them, all but one of them, which was his last fight against James Lil Long Top, that went to decision. But before that, pretty much every fight that he's had has been like TKO or knockout. And in his total fights, he's had see 12 career fights with 11 wins and 1 loss. And the 11 wins, he has 10 wins by KO or knockout, or TKO or knockout, no wins by submission, and then just 1 by decision, and then 1 loss by knockout TKO. Who was that against? That was against Manuel Souza, and that was back in like 2019, a different organization. So that was the last fight he lost to set off his 6 fight winning streak. So I mean, he's like the young stud, coming in to like claim his territory or his spot in the UFC, and that kind of is what Bobby Green King Green kind of feels here a little bit. He feels a little bit like a stepping stone or a gatekeeper kind of for Mauricio Ruffy to come in here and knock him out. And I could, if Bobby Green, King Green plays that game where he's coming in there with his hands down and he's not protecting himself well, I could definitely see Mauricio Ruffy catching him either with a counter of his own or just bulls in to that hands down, no defense, and catches King Green with a knockout. But at the same time, you just going off of career and what you've seen him do on the ground. He's never been submitted, so he must have a decent, at least defense. But he must not have a great offense to the submission game either, which Bobby Green has experienced that, and I would say is probably the better wrestler. We're just talking wrestler, but Mauricio, I'm sure he's a Brazilian jiu-jitsu artist in his own right. But anyway, so in this first bout on the main card of UFC 313, the lightweight, I'll have a lightweight bout between King Green versus Mauricio Ruffy. And I'm going with the young guy. I'm going to go with young guy Mauricio Ruffy to get the knockout in this fight. And I think I could see that either midway of the first round or maybe even some in the second round somewhere. I just feel a knockout coming either in the mid portion of the first round, mid to end of the first round, or somewhere in the second round. I got Mauricio Ruffy knocking King Green out. All right. Now then, on to the second fight on this card. We have a women's strawweight bout between Amanda Lemos versus Isman Lucindo. So let's see here. Amanda Lemos, she's known to be at the top of this women's division. What is this? The strawweight? Yeah, strawweight. The 115 pounders, the strawweight. So she's number 5 in that division, and she's fought for the belt not that long ago. She's she's three and yeah 3-2 in her last 5 fights, and she fought for the belt not long ago. So that shows that she's title contention, title quality fighter because she fought Zhang Wei Li 3 fights back on August 19th, 2023, and went. Zhang Wei Li pretty much dominated that entire fight. The fact Zhang Wei Li didn't end up getting the stoppage in that fight was kind of crazy because I think coming into this fight, trying to see who was Zhang Wei Li, if it was this fight or the fight before, everyone thought, yeah, I think it's, yeah, I'm wanting to say Tatiana Suarez was the one. Everyone thought that Tatiana Suarez was going to dominate Zhang Wei Li on the ground, and then Zhang Wei Li ended up winning the fight on the ground. That's not this fight. I think this fight at UFC 292, where Zhang Wei Li retained the belt or won the belt. She just dominated Amanda Lemos everywhere in this fight. That she wasn't able to get the finish was a little bit of a surprise. But she's lost that fight 3 fights back, and then her most recent fight, she lost Verna Dendiraba. She lost to her by submission armbar. But she's had 19 fights in her career with 14 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw. In those 14 wins, she has 8 wins by knockout, 3 wins by submission, and 3 wins by decision. And then she's also has 4 losses with 1 loss by knockout, 2 by submission, and 1 by decision. I imagine both of these female fighters are gonna try out and see who has the better striking game at first, because both of these women have quite a few knockouts on their career. That's been their main path to victory, either just a standing knockout that kind of sets off the ground and pound, or getting other women in bad positions on the ground and being able to finish them with ground and pound. So I look at these women very similar, just in their fighting styles and even records. But I would say at least Isman Lucindo, she doesn't have, I guess, quite the same experience just in regards to that she's fought for the belt, or she worked her way up to the point where she got a title opportunity. But she is 4-1 in her last 5 fights, and she's on a 4-fight winning streak, all in the UFC. And all of those fights have been by decision, besides one Pollyann Viana. She was able to get a arm triangle choke back on August 12th, 2023 at a fight night. But her total record, she has, see, 22 total fights with 17 wins and 5 losses. In the 17 wins, she has 8 wins by knockout or TKO, 3 wins by submission, and 8 wins by decision. And then in the 5 losses, she's been knocked out once. Yeah, knocked out once, submitted twice, and then lost by decision. So very similar records and very similar styles and ways of winning. I feel as if I'm gonna have to go with Amanda Lemos, kind of just edging her out, and probably because they have very similar fighting styles. It just kind of depend on who feels that they have the better striking game and who feels that they're kind of losing the battle of the striking game and who decides to try to shoot for a takedown first. But I think I'm going to go with Amanda Lemos in this. So in this women's strawweight bout between Amanda Lemos versus Eisman Lucindo, I'm going with Amanda Lemos to win this. I think she's just going to be able to edge her out and win this fight by decision and just use any of her uh, championship valor, at least for challenging for a belt. I think that's what will get her over the hump in this fight. All right, now then, on to the third fight on the main card. You have a lightweight bout between Jalen Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondes. Kind of this fight kind of has kind of a similar feel to the first fight on the card between King Green versus Mauricio Ruffy. You kind of got a young up and coming like knockout artist, fighting a guy that's I would say by now is a veteran in the UFC, but he's not almost 40 years old, so it's a little different because unlike King Green, Bobby Green, he's not almost 40 years old. So trying to say that Ignacio Bahamondes is like young and up and coming, but I mean, uh, I mean, Jalen Turner is still only 29 years old, so it's a little bit ridiculous when you say it like that. But both of these guys, should be getting a good. This would be a good styles matchup because this should be, I guess, kind of like the last fight I was talking about. Both of these guys should be coming out, and every fight, start standing up. And I figure both of them because have such a great background and kickboxing, they'll want to keep it standing until they feel like they're losing the fight on the ground. But I feel this would be a stand up fight to begin with, and just mostly this would be like a kickboxing bout. And this is a bit of a hard fight to pick, just going off of Jalen Turner's last 5 fights because he hasn't had very good luck at least in his last 5 fights because he's just 2-3 in his last 5 fights. But 2 of them were like razor thin, like split decisions or fights that almost could have been draws. You had uh, fourth fight back on March 4th, 2023. Mateus Gamrot lost split decision, and then the next fight, Dan Hooker lost split decision, and then his last 2 fights he just starched Bobby Green, got some flack for hammering him, I guess, a little bit too much while he was already out. And then I think he says that kind of led to his loss to Renato Moicano in his last fight at UFC 300, which was April 13th, 2024. So it's almost been a year since he's fought where he got not TKO'd by Renato Moicano, elbows and punches. But in his total career, he has had 22 fights with 14 wins and 8 losses. In the 14 wins, he's had 10 wins by knockout, 4 wins by submission, and then 8 losses. In the 8 losses, he's lost 4 by knockout. So I kind of see why he took a little bit of a break, took a year off because man, that not saying he's had a long stretch where his chin has looked a little suspect, but he's definitely shown even at this weight class of what 155, he's shown that he can be knocked out, and it had happened recently. So the four knockouts, and then has a great submission game, never been submitted, and then four by decision. So this like I said, this fight has a very kind of similar feel to the first fight between King Green and Mauricio Ruffy, as if is Jalen Turner going to be able to stop Ignacio Bahamondez's run to notoriety or not? I guess we'll have to see. But this should be a stand-up war, and hopefully we get to see someone go to sleep in this bout. But Anicio Bahamondez has had better luck in his last five fights, unlike Jalen Turner. He is 4-1 in his last five fights, and he is on a two-fight winning streak with knockouts over Christos Gallegos and Manuel Torres, a head kick and TKO punches on those two fighters. And he has 21 fights in his career with 16 wins, 5 losses. And in the 16 wins, he has 11 wins by knockout, 1 win by submission, and 4 wins by decision. And then in the 5 losses, he's never been knocked out. So that's something I'm putting a star by, or definitely highlighting that if this is going to be a kickboxing bout, I mean, you know who has the better chin, and Ignacio Bahamondez, who is also 2 years younger, just 27 years old. So it's hard to call Jalen Turner a stepping stone or a gatekeeper just because of his age, and the fact that just a couple of years ago he was kind of in the same kind of breath as Ignacio Bahamondez is now. But in those 21 fights, I think we've gone over that. Yeah, the never knocked out, but and then been submitted twice, and then 3 losses by decision. So looking at this, I would say for Jalen Turner, his best chance of winning this is to try to take this down. Even though I know you want to use your best skill, or what your best path to victory, or your best talent. Both of these guys they're great kickboxers. Like, that's what they're. But if you're trying to win this fight against Anicio Bahamondez, seeing about the only way that you can beat him, at least in his young, prospering career, is to try to get a submission. So might want to see Jalen Turner try to take this fight to the ground. But in this lightweight bout between Jalen Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondez, I think I'm gonna go. I got my teeth kind of gritting picking against some of these so-called favorites in some of these fights. But I want to go. I want to go with the more notable, Jalen Turner, at least in this fight. And we talked about it just a second ago. I think Jalen Turner took that whole year off, so he's had a long time to prepare for this fight, and hopefully he's been in the film room and has figured out, just kind of like I have, just from looking at the records and all that he needs to take Anicio Bahamondez down and try to get a submission. So in this lightweight bout between Jalen Turner versus Ignacio Bahamondez, I'm going with Jalen Turner to win, but I think he's going to win by submission, some type of submission. Let's see what his most common submission that he's gone to in any types of fights. Mostly, it looks like mostly chokes. Yeah, mostly chokes, either guillotines or triangles or a rear naked choke. So I think I'm looking for Jalen Turner to come at Anicio Bahamondez with a different game plan, to try to take him down and try to get a choke, try to submit him, try to put him to sleep, and try to put him to sleep without these hands, in a different way, with a choke. All right, now then, on to the co-main event of this card, and we got to get into a little bit of these sports and bet makers on some of these cards. A little surprising, but we have your co-main event. You have a lightweight bout between Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev, and I'm talking about those bet makers and odds makers. There's quite a few odds makers that actually have Justin Gaethje as a underdog in this fight, which is kind of crazy when you kind of look at it from like Justin Gaethje had been for several months. He'd been preparing for a fight against Dan Hooker, which it's pretty sad that we're going to miss out on that. But hopefully reschedule that for another time. But these guys, Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev, they fought about 2 years ago, March 18th, 2023, at UFC 287, and it it was close to being a draw, I guess, because it was a majority decision. So one of the judges must have seen it as a draw, and then the other two judges uh, edged out and gave it to Justin Gaethje. But the only thing I could think of as to why Rafael Fiziev, he's lost his last two fights, lost the what should have probably been a draw against Justin Gaethje, and then he blew his knee out in his last fight. So it's hard to really say that he's on a two-fight losing streak either. But I think people are definitely highlighting the devastating uh, final second KO, slumped and twisted on the canvas knockout that he received from Max Holloway. So I guess people are thinking that maybe his chin may be suspect, and maybe that'll show up in this fight against Fiziev. But Justin Gaethje, we talked a little bit of his last fights and kind of how they've gone. Let's see, he is 3-2 in his last five fights. With obviously we know the devastating knockout from Max Holloway, but then four fights back he lost to Charles Oliveira by submission rear naked choke. And then we already talked about the Rafael Fiziev fight, and then his most recent win, which was at UFC 291, July 29th, 2023. So that fight was almost 2 years back, where he got a head kick knockout over Justin Poirier to I guess win or solidify the BMF title. But Justin Gaethje has had 30 fights in his career with 25 wins and 5 losses. In the 25 wins, he's had 20 wins by knockout. So you know what he's trying to do. Same thing. He's trying to box and kickbox and trying to knock you out. And it definitely showed that that's the only way he was wanting to win. Definitely in his last fight. That's probably why he ended up uh, twisted on the canvas on top of the. I'd have liked to seen how that fight against Max Holloway would have went if he wouldn't have broke his nose early on. And then so 20 knockouts, 1 win by submission and 4 by decision. And then the 5 losses, he's been knocked out 3 times, which I guess sports bets and lines are concerned or are concerned Justin Gaethje maybe having a chin or what. And then in the so 3 losses by knockout, 2 by submission, and no by decision. So only very few fights really go to decision between these two fighters, at least for Justin Gaethje, that is. And then Rafael Fiziev, in his last 5 fights, he's 3-2 in his uh, three last 5 fights, but those he's on a 2-fight losing streak technically, because he lost to Justin Gaethje by majority decision, and then he blew his knee out against Mateus Gamrot. But I mean, before all that, he was on what? He was on a 6-fight winning streak with like almost every single fight being a fight of the night or a performance of the night bonus type fight. But kind of the difference between these two fights is just the amount of fights. Very similar fighters, just in regards to how they win fights. Rafael Fiziev has 15 wins, 15 fights with 12 wins and 3 losses. In the 12 wins, 8 have been by knockout, 1 by submission, and 3 by decision. So it's not quite as much, not quite as overwhelming as Justin Gaethje's, but just like Justin Gaethje's, majority of his wins come by knockout. And then in the three losses, he's been knocked out twice, even though one was an injury, and then never lost by submission and won by decision. So one lost by decision. So I think this fight's going to be very similar to the first one. It's just going to be kind of an all-out war. And Rafael Z was talking about how he was bleeding and he wants to see blood again, but maybe this time not just his blood. He felt that what ended up edging Justin Gaethje out in this fight is that he was just running into Justin Gaethje's jabs, which just had him doing his head. He was just running into them like a rock, like he was listening to rock and roll music or something. So I thought that was pretty funny. But I expect this to be a good fight again. But I think Justin Gaethje, I think kind of like Jalen Turner, taking off a year after getting knocked out, and then even though he was training and preparing for a different fighter, I think that should help him in this. And I mean, he has experience. He's fought him before, so this is basically just going to be like uh, round 4, 5, and 6, basically, of their fight, because neither one uh, was completely dominant over the other one or got a finish in that fight. But I think Justin Gaethje is just going to be just a little bit better than the first time they fought. So in this lightweight bout between the co-main event lightweight bout between Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev, I'm going with Justin Gaethje to win this, and I think he's just gonna win by decision. Last time it was a majority decision, so I think he's just gonna get a unanimous decision. I think it'll be a little more clear cut that he wins this fight by decision. So that's the co-main event. Now on to the light heavyweight championship, the main event for the light heavyweight championship bout against Alex Pereira, Putain Chama, the champion, versus Magomed Ankalaev, who's been in line for a while to finally get a shot at the light heavyweight bout. But Alex Pereira, man, he's just been doing work when it comes to being a fighting champion and putting on great shows for the fans, the UFC fans. He is five. Let's see, he is 5-0 in his last 5 fights, with all of them besides the Jan Blachowicz fight being a split decision, which goes back all the way to like July 29th, 2023. And I look at that it's funny that it's good that I mentioned that or came across that, but I look at Jan Blachowicz kind of a similar fighter to Magomed Ankalaev, just a big guy for the weight class who has powerful striking, but is also a beast on the ground. But Alex Pereira was able to defend his takedowns and his wrestling, and was able to win a split decision against him. So I kind of look at that as a similar opponent that Alex Pereira has fought before. And it's also funny that I say that because Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev have fought before as well. And I think that fight, I think it went to a draw. Yeah, so it went to a draw, and that was December. I guess that was even farther back. So this was December 10th, 2022 at UFC. Yes, UFC 282, and it was a split draw. So one of the judges had it a draw, and then one of the judges had it for Magomed Ankalaev, and then one for Jan Blachowicz. But yeah, so that's how I look at this, as a very similar fight, and why I see that Alex Pereira can win this fight, even though there's tons of people, just like I was saying, these bets and line setters and underdogs or favorites have been set, but quite a few of them actually have Alex Pereira, a fighting champion, a dominant champion, a straight up killer, knockout artist, hardest hitting fighter in the company, in the business. Literally, they actually have him as an underdog to Magomed Ankalaev, because I guess they're matching up their strengths for strength, and they don't see Alex Pereira's striking and just devastating power being a strength over Magomed Ankalaev's striking, but they have Magomed Ankalaev's combat sambo and wrestling like far and away of Alex Pereira. But it's kind of one of those things. Kind of, until I see it, I won't believe it. Even though I guess we did kind of see it when he started taking not respecting Israel Adonijah and got knocked out by him while Izzy was just kind of running away, defending himself back up against the cage and caught him because he was coming in wild trying to finish him. So I guess we have seen uh, Alex Pereira lose, but man, I just don't, I just feel that Alex Pereira is basically, he's fought a guy similar to Magomed Ankalaev. I guess it's hard to compare Magomed Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz, seeing how that fight was. What, 2.5 years ago, I guess. So we've gone over Alex Pereira. We'll finish going over his record here. Let's see. So he's 5-0 in his last 5 fights, all in the UFC, all being great fights, most of them being stoppages and devastating knockouts. He's only had 14 fights in his career, but a very impressive career. And his career arc has just been, they say it's like an arc, but his is just stretched like straight up into superstardom. And in those 12 wins, he has 10 wins by knockout, no wins by submission, and 2 by decision. And in the 2 losses, he's got the 1 knockout loss from Israel Sanye, and then 1 submission loss, which was in his first fight where he got rear naked choked. So I don't even put too much stock behind that, and then never lost by decision. All right, so that's Alex Pereira. Let's talk Magomed Ankalaev here for a second before we make our pick. He's talking some trash. I was a little surprised. These Russians and these Muslims, they're usually respectful, but man, he was talking trash. He was trying to stay at the press conference, and even after his last fight, he was telling Alex Pereira he needed to stop running from him, and that he's scared. And man, Alex Pereira just didn't really have much of a response to that. But I mean, I can't be too scared of him because they're fighting now. But in his last 5 fights, he is 3-1-1, with the 1-1 being a no contest. That one fight where I guess it was a legal knee to Johnny Walker, and then the draw that we've really been highlighting and talking about in that fight against Jan Blachowicz, where I kind of see those guys as very similar fighters. And he drew up a draw against Jan Blachowicz, but Alex Pereira beat him. So that's kind of, I guess you kind of see where I'm starting to lean here with this fight. But in his 22 fights, he has 19 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, 1 no contest. In the 19 wins, he has 10 wins by knockout. It's really surprising, honestly, that he's never, with the fact that he has such a great ground game and the combat sambo and Brazil submission wrestling, that he's never had a win by submission, but has gone the distance 9 times, and then in the 1 loss, he actually was a loss by submission, which that was Paul Craig back at a fight night triangle choke, March 17th, 2018. So that was way back. But this is a fight where kind of like the opposite of what Khalil Roundtree did or shouldn't have done, I guess, in the last fight against Alex Pereira, is that he came into that fight saying that he wasn't going to go for any takedowns. I feel like the last person that fought MVP may have said something similar to that. I can't remember who it was. Someone recently that was a real great wrestler said that. But I guess Khalil Roundtree said that to Alex Pereira. But in recent interviews and stuff, Khalil Roundtree is that he kind of did that to kind of prove something to himself. But if he ever gets a rematch, he will go for takedown if he sees the potential for doing it, because he's not going to go in there to the fight to try to prove something to himself. He's going to go in that fight to win. Now I figure Magomed Ankalaev has that same sense and what he's going into this fight. He's not going in this to have a pretty fight or I'm dead set on knocking Alex Pereira up, not knocking Alex Pereira out standing up I think he definitely will go to his wrestling and his sambo early in this fight, especially if he tastes the power from Alex Pereira. But Alex Pereira, in his career in MMA and in the UFC, has shown a great ability to avoid takedowns, stuff takedowns, even just be able to get back up when taken down. So even with that, I think I'm going to go with Alex Pereira. Kind of like I was saying earlier, I have to see it to believe it, and he's just been on such a run through the light heavyweight division. I was talking about Magomed Ankalaev's trash talking a little bit. I guess that goes back to X or Twitter a couple months back when he was talking about Alex Pereira running from him, and there was uh, some comments there about uh, Magomed Ankalaev maybe calling Alex Pereira an alcoholic or a drunk or something because you'd seen some fights, some UFC events where he was at some UFC events while he's like chugging beers and eating glizzies and stuff. So he's talking a lot of trash coming from Magomed Ankalaev. And during the weigh-in show earlier today, they were talking like Alex Pereira was having a hard time cutting weight. That had me concerned when I first heard that. Like this was a hard, tough weight cut for him, but he weighed in right off the bat with his drawers on. He still had his drawers on. They didn't have to bring uh, the the tent out or whatever, the curtain out for him to weigh in at 205. So I don't know how much I believe that or not, but kind of feels a little hard to believe that he had like a super hard weight cut just for the fact that just a couple of years ago he was cutting down to middleweight. So if that's true, maybe he's trying to bulk up to finally see. That's definitely the next thing I'd want to see from Alex Pereira. If he wins this fight, I'd like to see him move up to heavyweight. But in this light heavyweight bout between Alex Pereira, the champion, versus the challenger Magomed Ankalaev, I'm going with Alex Pereira to win this, and I think he's going to continue his knockout streak. So that would be what, 5 in a row if he knocks Magomed Ankalaev. Can't really say what round it'll be. Might be kind of similar to the Khalil Roundtree fight, may come in the championship rounds. And if he doesn't win it like that, I think he'll just edge out a split decision, kind of similar to the fight that he had against Jan Blachowicz, because he's fought fighters that their main ignition initiative in the fight is to take him down and hold him there and maybe even look for a submission. But I think Alex Pereira is, if you haven't figured it out by now, he's shown people that he can defend takedowns. He can get back up when taken down. He can avoid uh, these great wrestlers and Brazilian jiu-jitsu artists, avoid them getting a hold of his neck. So in this the main event light heavyweight championship bout between Alex Pereira, the champion, versus Magomed Ankalaev, the challenger, I'm going with Alex Pereira to win this. And I think he's gonna continue with the stone hands, Putan, Chama. I think he's going to get another knockout and supplant himself as maybe at that point maybe considered the best knockout artist in UFC history, or at least in the light heavyweight division, which is wild when you talk about guys like I guess John Jones and Chuck Liddell. But anyway, so that's the fight. Let's rehash real quick our picks on the main card, and we'll go ahead and get up out of here. So in the first fight on the card, I was a lightweight bout between King Green versus Mauricio Ruffy, and it's hard for me to to want to pick King Green. I think that's kind of because of the age and the fact that he's shown a little bit of uh, that shown that he can be knocked out kind of in some couple fights, and just at that age and fighting some of these young devastating knockout artists, up and comers. I just don't know how well that hands down stance with your hands down and not defending these dangerous strikers. I just don't see that working out very well in this bout against Mauricio Ruffy. So lightweight bout between King Green versus Mauricio Ruffy. I got Mauricio Ruffy. I got him winning by knockout. And then the second fight on the card is a women's strawweight bout between Amanda Lemos versus Aisman Lucindo, and they're very similar fighters, just in the regards that every fight starts standing up, and they're going to want to see who the better striker is first. But then whoever feels that they're losing the fight standing, they'll probably start going for takedowns. But just record wise and and like knockouts, submissions, what ways they've won and ways they've lost, very similar. But I think I'm going to go with Amanda Lemos just because she has a little bit more title contender uh, uh, veteran and just experience behind her because she's fought for the belt and she fought her way up to the point where people thought that she was worthy of a title shot. And Eisman Lucinda just hadn't done that yet. But in this women's strawweight bout between Amanda Lemos versus Eisman Lucinda, I'm going with Amanda Lemos to win this. I think she'll just win by decision. I think they may kind of cancel each other out because they're such similar fighters to each other. And then on the third fight on the card, we have a lightweight bout between Jalen Turner versus Agnesio Bahamondes. And this fight, we said it several times now, that this fight definitely feels kind of similar to the first fight on this card, as if it's kind of like wanting to turn Jalen Turner into a can or a stepping stone or a gatekeeper, but he's too young for that, and he's shown that he can go on stretches where he's dominated and been a knockout artist, and he's shown that he has a great stand-up game, and maybe something that Agnesio Bahamondes doesn't have is a ground game, and maybe a little bit more well-rounded of a mixed martial artist. So in the lightweight bout between Jalen Turner versus Agnesio Bahamondes, I'm going with Jalen Turner, and I think he he's gonna try the striking game just to see if he's got any type of edge in that. But I think he should know that he has the advantage on the ground and should probably try to look for Agnesio Bahamondes' neck, because that's like what, two of the three losses that Agnesio Bahamondes has had have been by submission. So I think Jalen Turner best path to victory is to try to get him down and try to get a hold of his neck. So in the lightweight bout between Jalen Turner versus Agnesio Bahamondes, I'm going with Jalen Turner to win by submission. And then on to the co-main event, Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev. Bummer. I think I'd much rather seen Dan Hooker, but we've seen this fight too. We know that this fight can be a bloody war as well. And like Rafael Fiziev said, maybe this time it'll be a little bit more equal. So maybe both of them will be bleeding all over the canvas, and maybe he won't be running into those jabs so much this time, to where it looks like he's in a punk rock or listen to a rock and roll song. But still, I see this fight being very similar to the first fight, but maybe Justin Gaethje with his time off, and don't really know what Rafael Fiziev will be coming back from a knee injury. But Justin Gaethje in this lightweight bout between Justin Gaethje versus Rafael Fiziev, I'm going with Justin Gaethje, but I think it's just it'd be a little bit more impressive of a win. Maybe a fight that it's not almost a draw. I think Justin Gaethje will be a little more clear-cut winner in this fight. So I got Justin Gaethje winning by unanimous decision. And then the main event, the light heavyweight championship bout between Alex Pereira, the champion, versus Magomed Ankalaev, the challenger. I'm going with Alex Pereira to continue winning. I said it. I'm gonna have to see it. I'm gonna have to see it to believe that he can be beat. I mean, we've seen that he can be knocked out, and it's been a while since it happened. But I think most people are saying that Magomed Ankalaev is going to come in here and dominate him on the ground, and maybe submit him, and even, I guess, betting lines and underdogs and favorites and stuff. They're looking at Magomed Ankalaev as the favorite. They don't see Alex Pereira's striking and just his power, breaking those boxing arcade games, because he's so powerful. Don't see that as much of an advantage of Magomed Ankalaev's ground game, even though I look at Magomed Ankalaev as a very similar challenger to Jan Blachowicz, which Alex Pereira beat and Magomed Ankalaev didn't beat. So in this light heavyweight bout between Alex Pereira, the champion, versus Magomed Ankalaev, the challenger, I'm going with Alex Pereira to continue his reign at light heavyweight, and it could be by knockout. If it's by knockout, it'll be I think it'll be in the fourth, fifth round, the championship rounds. But I also could easily see him winning a split decision or a unanimous decision or majority decision, just kind of similar to what he did when he fought Jan Blachowicz. So in this light heavyweight bout between Alex Pereira, the champion, versus Magomed Ankalaev, the challenger, I'm going with Alex Pereira to win this. I think he's going to win by knockout in the later rounds. So that's UFC 313, Pereira versus Ankalaev. Just the closing statements is, man, I just hope this card and maybe at least the early and the preliminary card is as good as UFC Fight Night Cejudo versus Song, where like pretty much every fight ended in a finish and a stoppage. So that's a lot to live up to, but I'm probably hearing feedback and living up to. You're probably only hearing that from me, but I want to see that. I want to see such a great performance and such crazy wins and stoppages uh, um, and have UFC 313 the what is this? This would be what, the third or the fourth numbered pay-per-view card to supplant itself as the best card this year of 2025. But anyways, I think that's about all I have for you. So can I get a check, please?